Honourable Member for Calgary Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we're debating Bill C-16, and I think in doing so, we need to first set out some of the context for why we are having this debate and how we got here, or where we are right now as a society in Canada. One of the unfortunate outcomes of this past 10 years of Liberal government has been a measurable, significant rise in incidents of crime in Canada. This is not an opinion. This is measured by Statistics Canada and many other observers. Every category of crime is up after 10 years of this Liberal government, and some of the ones that are spectacularly, in such a negative way, up are things like violent crime on transit systems in our cities, extortion, violent crime. We've seen the murder, the increased incident of the murder of police officers. I mean, really serious, troubling crime that Canadians are very concerned about. And so, how did we get here? Well, Mr. Speaker, this government undertook very specific legislative changes that have affected the incidence of crime in our cities and towns and in all places across Canada. In the 42nd Parliament, they brought in Bill C-75, which was the catch and release bail law change. And that's not just a clever political phrase, Mr. Speaker. It is literally what that bill did to our system, where they brought in and legislated the principle of minimum restraint and compelled by law the principle that judges must always apply minimum restraint. And so this plays itself out in our courts, where people are arrested and released and rearrested and released and rearrested and released on and on again, and so forth. So police forces across Canada all know who the small number of criminals that commit a disproportionate number of offenses, who they are. And they can do nothing about it other than rearrest and rearrest and rearrest. The City of Vancouver says that they have 40 individuals that are responsible for 6,000 annual police interactions. So these are people that are arrested over and over and over again. Literally, an average of more than 3 times a week for this small group of criminals. So this is the principle of minimum restraint working itself out in the streets of our cities. And every other city police department has a similar story. I've talked to many police officers in my city and who affirm that this is the case in our community as well. So this last summer, the summer before last, I spoke to the city police chief's office in Calgary and heard about a series of home invasions where they arrest the same person, the leader of a group of people that were breaking into homes at 3 or 4 in the morning. And when you break into a house at 4 o'clock in the morning, that's a home invasion. You're expecting the homeowner to be in their bed at that hour. And they arrest the suspects, they figure out who's doing it, they arrest them, and they are released in order to do, and then are able to do the same offense the same week, rearrested, the same offense. So on it goes. The other concrete step that this government took that has had the result of increasing crime in Canada has been, or failing to address crime in Canada, was Bill C-5 in the 44th Parliament. In that Parliament, they passed a bill that stripped away mandatory minimum penalties for a host of offenses, including serious drug and firearms offenses. And so that's where we are today. We have a measurable, demonstrative increase in crime after decades of falling incidents of crime. We had, for the first time in many decades, a rise in crime over a 10-year period. And the response of this government during that time period was to make it easier for criminals to get out of jail and harder for judges to send repeat violent offenders into custodial sentences. So here we are today debating Bill C-16, and it contains measures that indeed Canadians and Conservatives have been demanding for years. We have asked through private members' legislation from the Conservative benches. The member for Calgary Nose Hill had a bill in the last Parliament to ban artificial deep fakes of intimate images and the circulation thereof, and include that in the criminal code, and to compel internet service providers to report incidents of child sex abuse material. We had the member for Kamloops Thompson Nicola, who had proposed through private members' legislation the automatic first-degree charge for murder of an intimate partner. So these are things that we have proactively suggested to the government, and we are pleased that they have adopted these measures. We're pleased that they're at least talking about the bottlenecks in the system, that they are introducing legislation about coercive control and about restoring or preserving mandatory minimum penalties. But, Mr. Speaker, are they? This bill contains a carve-out that many observers, including prosecutors, suggest will, in fact, do nothing to protect mandatory minimum penalties, including ones that have been upheld by the Supreme Court for decades and that have been introduced by successive Liberal and Conservative governments exercising their democratic responsibility to determine, as elected officials, what power the state would have to incarcerate somebody for serious crime. The carve-out contained in this bill may well undo mandatory minimum penalties that currently exist and have currently been upheld while failing to reinstate them in many other cases that the public is demanding. So this bill has problems. This bill is not a panacea to deal with this problem. And it really is worth reminding Canadians why we are here. And it's come to my attention, I forgot at the outset to state I will share my time with the member from Richmond Hill South. So thank you for the reminder of that. We don't want to, because I'm looking forward to his remarks as well. But the carve-outs turn Parliament. The carve-out in this bill potentially turns the power of elected officials, the power of the people of Canada who elect their representatives to come to this place and determine what the penalties should be for heinous, terrible offenses, and to turn them into mere guidelines. So, I mean, these hypotheticals that they always come up with. I was here for the debate on C5 when David Lametti came up with an outrageous, actually quite an arrogant and offensive scenario that he imagined for why they shouldn't have a mandatory minimum sentence for dangerous use of a firearm with intent. And so we see this from the Liberals trying to imagine a circumstance rather than dealing with the concrete. And it goes to an approach, and we don't agree with that approach. That approach is what has got us here. So I hope that this bill will be examined thoroughly. Probably it will need to be amended. but that at the end we will get to where we need to be and restore the power of Parliament to determine mandatory minimum penalties for serious crime.
Questions and comments? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Commentaire, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Yes, first, Mr. Speaker, to recognize that Bill C-16 actually reinstates mandatory minimums. What it does is it puts in a safety valve so that we will be charter compliant. The member from Kamloops, the Conservative member that sits right in front of the member, has actually advocated in the past regarding the need for safety valve. The Conservative Party, much like it's doing with C-14, wants to continue to prevent the legislative agenda to pass. I've asked now one of his colleagues, and I would ask the same member, would this member or the Conservative Party agree that it is a part of a crime package, including Bill C-14, and make a commitment, at least a personal commitment, to allow this legislation to pass all readings before the end of February?
The member for Calgary Crowfoot.
It's funny how he wants me to commit to a series of things that his own House Leader has most of the control over, which is when a bill is going to pass in this place. I don't know when they're going to call the bill. We've already seen what they've done at the Justice Committee, where C-14 was expeditiously referred to the Justice Committee only to languish there while they play politics with Bill C-9. So, this member is determined to blame the opposition for their inability to manage the parliamentary calendar.
Questions and comments? Question and commentaire, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, I would like to thank my colleague for his speech. But I would also like to note that Quebec saw its 4th femicide of the year in my riding, the riding of Shefford. So obviously, all my thoughts are with the family members and loved ones of Véronique Champagne. There was a vigil in Rougemont. And there I heard some remarks by one of her friends. She said that femicide is among the most avoidable categories of crime because there are often precursor signs that it will take place. This brings me to the question of coercive control. We heard in committee that as long as the criminal code does not recognize coercive control, police officers will lack the tools they need to intervene in advance before a situation degrades and becomes a femicide. This is such a crucial issue. So what does my colleague have to say about it?
Well, the member mentions, I didn't really have time, it's a pretty big bill to go through all of it, and so I'm glad that she brought that portion of it to my attention in this debate and allow me a moment to comment on it. Yes, we agree and stand with victims, and yes, we know that there are many signs, and we never want to see scenarios where someone is murdered and everybody that knows the scenario, or the family, or whether it's the police or the neighbors who say they saw it coming, but the police lack tools to intervene. So this is a very serious concern, and it's something that many of our members have talked about and commented on, and so yes, we are very concerned about this, and are glad that we have this debate happening on C-16.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Ponoka Disbury.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to thank my colleague from Calgary Crowfoot for his excellent speech. I just want to recap how things work around here, Mr. Speaker, and ask my colleague to comment on them. Conservatives are always way out ahead of Liberals when it comes to things dealing with justice and public safety. As a matter of fact, we warned them about the consequences of their changes in Bill C-75, Bill C-5, and a number of other changes that they made. We told them that crime would go up, and we told them that our communities would become less safe. They ignored us and did it anyway. Then we proposed private members' bills, of which the Liberals across the way systematically vote against every single time until public pressure gets so great that they actually then take our ideas, bundle them up in a bill, put them before the House, and then claim that we're blocking them. Is that actually true?
Member for Calgary Crowfoot, a brief response.
Well, that was an excellent, succinct summary of exactly what has happened in this place over the last 10 years. That is exactly it. They create a problem, we propose a solution, They turn down our solution, they copy our solution, and then blame us for it not passing fast enough. That's exactly what's going on in this place.
Resuming debate.